computer. Okay. So please say your name, where you are now, who are you briefly?
So my name is Tunde Hovarth, and I am currently in Budapest in a rental apartment. That's not mine. I'm visiting because right now I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, in the United States. I've been living in the US for more than 12 years now. And in Santa Fe, we've been living about 4 years. So yeah, I've been around a little bit, and I'm visiting right now, and it's interesting because it's still COVID, and Budapest is in a much worse situation than Santa Fe back in the United States. So it's interesting to pick up the energy from the people in the street, you know, that kind of everybody's super cautious, everybody has to wear a mask in the street. Yeah, there's that kind of fear and anxiety lingering in the air. So it's not easy to be in it at this time. Yeah.
And yeah, maybe silly question, but were you afraid of flying, actually, of of flying under COVID? Yeah, in this
Well,
circumstance.
the reason I'm not is because I'm vaccinated. So I got both of my vaccines about a month ago. The United States is doing a very good job in that area right now, so we're very grateful. So I really wasn't. I mean, I'm very cautious also, but not. I don't have that fear that I see in people's eyes, or I'm not that anxious. So that's why I'm saying it's interesting. I'm not. I'm sure if I was not vaccinated, I would probably feel the same. I probably wouldn't even be here. But because I got the vaccine, I thought I think it's gonna be all right. Yeah.
And do you think it has, yeah, I mean, I can see it here in Poland as well. I mean, in the streets, the thing you mentioned, and we also need to wear masks here. And I've been vaccinated twice already, so I got those 2 shots. So I also feel, happy and privileged in this sense. But don't you think it's also about politics there in Budapest, or I don't
That's
know?
part of it too. I'm sure that's part of it too. Yeah. There's I think, Hungarians have a tendency to feel somewhat depressed, somewhat under the weather, somewhat not that happy. I think our collective, soul is not a very happy soul to begin with. And I think everything that's happening currently politically does not help to lift us up,
Okay.
to put it this way. But I lived through 4 years of Donald Trump, so that was not easy either. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because in Poland it's more about split, not so, of course, about depression maybe, and in among people, and some isolation, but people are split. I mean, they are splitted, we say. So they are, because of politics, because of anything, if it is vaccination or whatever topic comes,
yeah, I
LGBT.
think it's here too. It's a deep division, but it's true for the United States too. So there's an enormously deep division. I don't think it's ever been so tangible. I'm sure it's always been there, but it's never been so upfront and figural, to speak in our Gestalt language, as these days. So it's really, I think that there's I think a lot about it, and I think something is really coming up in us, both at the collective and then the personal level. We can call it split, we can call it division, we can call it the otherness. And I think it's very difficult. I think it makes our lives very, very difficult.
I guess maybe we will come back to it, but now I am also interested in different aspects of you and in you generally. So my question is, So what is the reason you are coming back to Hungary every now and then? And why did you move out in the first place?
Well, I moved out in the first place because my husband is American, and
Okay.
we thought for a long time where would be a good place to live. And one of the things we said was that wherever we move, we should both speak the language of that country. So that kind of reduced our choices to like 4 or 5 countries in the world, 6.
Mhm,
Because we only speak English, that's our common. He doesn't speak Hungarian, and I only speak English as a second language. So then we decided that I would move,
mhm,
and so I moved. That was 12 years ago, and I keep coming back for several reasons. One is because I've got very dear friends
mhm,
who I love, some family,
mhm,
and clients. So I
mhm,
love coming back to work. I love coming back to teach. I love
mhm,
doing Gestalt work in Hungarian, even though I do some Gestalt work in English also. But there's something about the mother tongue.
mhm,
There's something about mother too, but the mother tongue, to speak in a language that is so in me. It was so
mhm,
interesting when I moved to the United States, and I've visited before many times. I got some of my Gestalt training also in the US in Cape
mhm,
Cod,
mhm,
at the Gestalt Institute in
mhm,
Cape Cod, and it took me a few years to figure out what was my problem when I was speaking English or working Gestalt work in English, working with clients or doing those training programs. And I realized that the problem is that when I was speaking English, I never got that same visceral response in my body
mhm,
as compared to Hungarian. So when I speak Hungarian, those vowels, those sounds, those syllables, those the connotations or associations, they kind of resonate in my body. So it's a visceral thing to speak in our
mhm,
mother tongue. In a second language, after 12 years, there are some phrases and some words that bring me that same
mhm,
experience or similar
mhm,
experience. But it's a huge difference. I think it's always a big difference.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine. Before we started recording, I was telling you about this, international community, Polish community, and now when I, take part in those workshops or groups with Polish Gestalt therapists or practitioners generally, it's it's such a relief actually to be so spontaneous with language, I mean.
And I totally believe that language is in the body also. So it's
Mhm.
it's it's that, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So the sounds give an extra sort of
Hmm.
experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. uh, okay, and what about because we always ask this question about who you are as a person. You've been watching some of the interviews, so how would you define your qualities, your values, your passions?
Um, I thought a lot about that, and I want to share a story about that also. But the word that keeps coming back to me over and over in the past few years now, I think fundamentally I'm an explorer. I love exploring. That's what I love, and I love exploring outwardly, and I love exploring inwardly. I love helping clients explore their own inner lives and their own
Mm,
experiences and who they really are. And I think there's nothing more exciting for me than that, because not only because it's always a journey, of course, being on an exploration is it's a big journey, and it's an exciting journey, not always a happy journey. Sometimes it's a very
mhm,
painful journey. But there's always adventures, and then there's always the learning. So there's always something that makes me richer, that makes me a fuller person, so to speak.
mhm, mm,
I love that. I love
mhm,
that. I don't think I could ever live without exploring.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
But on the professional side, I actually mostly work as a Gestalt leadership coach and
mhm,
team coach, and I have a small practice as a Gestalt therapist. But I am I meet with executive clients and leaders and their teams and organizations also more often than therapy clients. But the work is, I think, the beauty of Gestalt is that kind of the same.
Yeah, yeah, I imagine. And what's the story behind? Because you said something.
That's right.
I was.
So, well, yeah, because when I started studying Gestalt, which was a long time ago, it was about 18 years ago when I first went to it was about 18 years ago when I first participated in a 3-day Gestalt course. It was facilitated by Bernd Legraf. I don't know if you know Bernd Legraf. He's in England. He's in London. Fantastic person, a fabulous person.
Okay.
And Bernd was facilitating that. And then after those 3 days, I mean, I was completely hooked. I said, I have no idea about I don't know what this Gestalt is, but I know that I need it. I know that I want to. I think many of us feel that way. We're hooked, and we're kind of hooked for life, I think. I know many Gestaltists who are hooked for life. And then so Bernd started actually training us as Gestalt therapists. We were the very first, we were the pioneers in Hungary. There were no Gestalt therapists, there were no Gestalt programs or any kind of therapy training. So we were the pioneer group. We started, I don't even know how many we started. We started many. I think we started almost 16, and then we graduated like 9 in the group. And it was 4 years, like for all of us. And in those 4 years, actually, I think I was most occupied with this question, who am I? Because every time I asked that question, some of the teachers started to ask that question, not just from me, but everybody in the training group. And every time I heard that question, I had only one answer. And the one answer I could say to that is nothing. Who are you? Was the question I could always say. Nothing. And the way I meant it was like nothing, no answer, nothing comes, nothing. It was more than I don't know, because it wasn't like an I don't know. It was deeper than that. And it took about 2 years for me to sit with that, as we always say, just sit with it, even if it's awful, sit with it. And it was bad. It was a very painful experience. It was rough. It was hard. It was terrifying many times. And I kept asking people. That was kind of a project. I kept asking people I met, say, if you hear this question, who are you? Do you have an answer to that? Most people did. I was so envious. I can't describe it. I'm like, how come some people know and how come I don't? And then there were a few people who told me that they're struggling. They're also struggling. But a lot of people were pretty confident about who they were, or at least they had an answer that sounded confidently. Anyway, and then toward I think it was our 4th year, we had another fantastic teacher. She's called Ulrike Enke. She's also from London. She's originally a German lady. Do you know her? Have you heard of her?
I guess those names sound familiar, both names. I don't know, they are from Gestalt Center or Metanoia?
I think Ulrike used to work at Metanoia. I think.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But anyway, and then she took this answer. She was really serious about it. She took it incredibly seriously, and she said, "Well, if you're nothing, then become nothing." And I'm like, no. No, I don't. We can't do that. She said, yeah. She's just fabulous. She's a great practitioner, great Gestalt practitioner. And so she just insisted. She said, I'm going to guide you, and I'm here with you. And we were sitting in a group, of course, in the training, and I had to become nothing. I'm telling you, that was a life-changing experience. It was life-changing. It was unbelievable, because I had to enter the nothing, and not just, cognitively, not even emotionally. I think at that time, I really wasn't, because I said to her, I said, how can I be nothing? I said, if I become nothing, I'm going to seize. I didn't say I would die, because it's not what I was concerned about. I said to her, I'm going to seize. And she said to me, well, then seize. She's very confident about it. And And it was a fabulous process. I mean, it was incredibly painful, but it was a life-changing experience, because in retrospect, when I think back, at that time I wasn't aware of it, but when I think back, I think it was a deeply spiritual experience. And at that time, I'm not religious. I am very interested in spirituality, not esoterics, but spirituality and the spirit work and all of that. But I think that was my first conscious experience like that. And it was really life-changing, because from then on, I think something opened up. There was this opening inside me, probably because I went through so much pain. Somebody in the group, one of my classmates, said to me, because I was crying, I was crying and crying and crying and crying. I have no idea for how long I was crying, until I stopped crying, because I reached kind of bottom. And as I reached bottom, it was really like, the experience was like sitting at the bottom of an ocean on the sand. It wasn't an image, it was just kind of that body experience, like, this is it, this is the bottom, there's no deeper than that. And then I stopped crying, and that's when the shift happened, the transformation happened. And but after the whole thing, we did the debriefing in the group, and one of my classmates said to me, if there was ever a museum of pain in the world, this piece of work that we witnessed with your crying at the beginning, that would be the centerpiece. Because she said to me, I've never seen anybody in so much pain ever. And it was incredible. So anyway, so that's why, and then many years went by since then, but bit by bit, I started to gather an answer to this, who am I? And so I don't have that answer to nothing anymore, but I'm an explorer.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
It requires a courage, actually, to be honest with oneself and say nothing really comes.
Yeah, and just entertain the thought, for years I was entertaining the idea, what if I'm nothing? What if? And the incredible thing is that I get clients, not one, not two, who struggle with similar problems or similar issues. Is this, who am I? And what if, is this, they don't find who they really are. And it's a beautiful journey, I mean, and I love guiding people in that journey, but it's painful.
And may I ask if this explorating nature of yours started to develop after that life-changing experience, or it was always with you in a way?
I think it's always been with me. I love traveling, and I love traveling to faraway places. And I love mountains. I did a beautiful trip, a long trip in the Himalayas. I did the whole Annapurna circle once in the 30s. I did 5 weeks in Kyrgyzstan, which was quite an experience also. And, climbed some big mountains. I did the Grand Canyon. I went all the way down and came back up. Which is like almost like it's gonna kill me, I mean, it's tough. It's called the Grand Canyon, and also because you do it in 48 hours. It's incredibly strenuous. And then recently, I just went to last year. I'm not even sure which year it was. Not this past December, but before that, I went to Patagonia because I wanted to. That was specifically, I wanted to go to the end of the world. That's how it was at the back in my mind. I wanted to go to the end of the world and by myself. So it was a deal with my husband that I would do it by myself, and I did it, and it was fantastic. I was there like 10 days and hiking every single day in Patagonia, and you kind of know that this is the end of the. I wasn't at the tip, but almost.
Oh,
Quite, but almost. And so all my life I've been exploring. I think when I was younger, I was reading. That's how I explored, in books, through books. I've always been a very curious person. Even as a child, I loved listening to adults' conversations and figuring things out. What is it that they're really talking? I mean, I know that this is what they say, but what is it that they're really talking about? So, yeah, I always had that curiosity. Yeah.
Okay. And so I know what your passion is. I mean, mountains and hiking, and what other passions of yours are?
I love
Yeah.
whales. And when I say whales, when I say these words, I use them actually symbolically.
Mhm.
Besides Gestalt therapy and anything Gestalt, which I love, and truly it's been a life-changing experience for me, I love Jungian psychology.
Mhm.
And I think Gestalt and Jungian psychology, they're highly compatible, highly compatible. And I wish there were some programs when they teach them together. Because I think it's just beautiful work. And I think Gestalt took so much actually from Jung.
Mhm.
Um, and there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of
Mhm.
competition.
Mhm. Okay. Mhm.
So so when I say the whale, the whales are my other passion. I mean, when symbolically, first of all, I worked in my Gestalt therapy, in my own therapy. I worked with the whale for a long time as a
Mhm.
symbol, the whale inside
Mhm.
me,
Mhm.
um, and I think that one of the most gorgeous animals in the world, and not only gorgeous, but they're so graceful. I don't know if you've ever seen
Okay.
any whales. Have you seen whales?
I guess through the, yeah, maybe in some in Spain,
Aquarium?
yeah, in aquarium in Portugal, I guess there is this big, but I don't know if those were really whales, so maybe I haven't seen actually, yeah, in films,
Oh yeah,
unfortunately.
I mean, but still, they're so incredibly graceful with that
Uh-huh,
giant. But I envy that part. I envy many things from whales, but that's one of them, that they've got this
uh-huh,
big body and they're incredibly graceful and they kind of
uh-huh,
dance in the water and
hmm.
so coordinated, not just in their own bodies, but they're coordinated with their whale companions. So
Okay.
one time on a whale watch tour, I saw 5 next to one another, and it was like water ballet. It was like ballet, and they were all 5 of them were just doing this show in the ocean,
Wow.
Atlantic
Wow.
Ocean. It was unbelievable. So they're wonderful, and I also love their capacity or ability. They can go down very deep, like in Gestalt work. We can also do that, but because they're mammals, they have to come
Mhm.
back up and they have to breathe. So I love how they do this. They go down
Uh-huh.
deep and then explore at the depth of the ocean, and then they come back up and then they breathe. And then they play, and they're incredibly playful, and they're highly sexual animals and very social.
Mhm.
Um,
I
so
will watch
some,
some movies now. I mean, some clips
yeah.
from the YouTube, or maybe you can recommend. But now I immediately I have this, yeah, I would love to watch. I will
So
do it.
there's so much we can learn from them. When I
Okay.
say I'm passionate about the whales, I always use it as um, it's a learning experience for me. It's a learning experience. For example, because I have to always come up,
Mm-hmm.
breathe, and then, for example, and they're always in community, or most of the time they're in
Mm-hmm.
community. And when one of them gets sick, for
Mm-hmm.
example, and
Mm-hmm.
if the sick one can't come up to breathe because it's too weak, then what they do is that they form a circle
Oh.
at night, and they take turns, that one lifts up the sick one, and then the circle moves on, and then the next one, when they have to breathe again, the next one lifts the sick one up, and then so the sick one can breathe. So, and this is the way they eat many times also. They form a circle and they trap all those teeny things in the ocean, make these big bubbles, and
Wow.
and they do it in a circle, so everybody contributes for a bigger chunk of food for
Mm-hmm.
everybody in the circle. So I think there's so much we as humans could learn from them and how they behave. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and these are my beliefs. I'm kind of describing you what I believe in as a
Yeah, 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 somehow enchanted. I don't know how to put it. Yeah, I love animals generally, and it's not that I've been like this all my life. When I was a kid, I didn't have any animals at home, and animals started to be coming to me. I mean, and live with me very late in my life. So it's really something that I'm still exploring. I mean, this relationship with this
yeah,
world.
it's very powerful.
Yeah.
And another piece I could mention is fairy tales. That's my other
Uh-huh.
passion, fairy tales. I grew up on fairy tales. I grew up in to put it mildly, in quite a dysfunctional family. My family is quite dysfunctional. Like, I think a lot of the Gestaltists come from dysfunctional families. A lot of Gestaltists I know, and mine was too. And fairy tales were absolutely my saving grace. They were absolutely. I mean, I created this. I had this other reality, and it gave me a lot of hope, and it gave me a lot of optimism, and since then I started to work with fairy tales. I also use fairy tales in my work. Some of it is related to the Jungian psychology that I mentioned. And I think what I see is whether I use a fairy tale in a presentation that I give at a conference or something, or if I just share a fairy tale or a legend or a myth, doesn't matter, to a client, just by sharing it, I always see a shift. There's always a shift. And I think the shift is because collectively, I think as humans in the world, I think we're so hungry for fairy tales, for legends, for mythology. I think there's this huge deficit in the world because everything has become so literal and so, if I can't touch it, I can't believe it.
Yeah. Rational.
Everything's very rational, and we've got a huge deficit from mythology. And how do you explain mythology? You can't prove it. How can you prove it? You can't prove it.
Yeah.
It's not about that. It's about feeding the soul. And how do we do that? So I totally believe in that. And I think a lot about how to actually combine these things, like how to bring fairy tales or mythology into the work of Gestalt, or vice versa, using a fairy tale, and how to bring in the Gestalt world and the Gestalt work and the here and now. So I find it incredibly exciting, just like arts. I use a lot of arts also when I teach, because I totally believe that when we do soul work, when we do spirit work, words can take us only this far. Words and sentences and verbality only carry us this far. And then when we reach this point, then what? And then art comes in, and mythology comes in, and the whole world opens up. And I love that, because there's immediately, you can feel the shift. I'm sure you know it from your own experiences. Immediately that people wake up. People just wake up, and there's this opening. And then there's, I think, the capacity to receive something increases. So there will be this bigger capacity to receive some insights, or to receive some kind of understanding, or parts of ourselves that we couldn't see before.
Yeah. I would like to ask you more about your work these days, but first I would like to know your story with Gestalt. How did it develop later, when you had that, training and this life-changing experience and so on? What was next in your Gestalt career? So
well, first of all, I think I'm somewhat unique in my Gestalt training, because so I did this 3 days, which was an organizational Gestalt, or Gestalt in organizational development was my entry point, and I was hooked for life. And then I started my Gestalt therapy training for 4 years. We had a mixed group. We had some English people, some people came from England, and then most were Hungarians. So it's lovely, because it was a diverse group.
So, like, participants were from the UK as well. UK.
Right. There were a few participants coming from UK. And most of us were Hungarians, and then all the teachers came from UK, because there were no Gestaltists in Hungary at the time. And I completed my first year, and I said to myself, well, this is all very well, because I'm learning how to work with one person. I'm learning this one-on-one. But I figured, because as I mentioned, I come from a dysfunctional family, I figured most people's problems are with another person. Or within the family, or so it's usually more people involved. And I wanted to study that. I wanted to study how to work with a couple, or how to work with a family, or parts of a family, or business partners, for example. And that's how. And I did some research on the internet where I could learn that, and that's when I found the Gestalt Institute on Cape Cod in Massachusetts. And so I studied parallel. I studied here in Europe,
Wow. Mm-hmm.
and then 3 times a year I went to the UK,
Uh-huh.
and it was fantastic. And I also wanted
To the UK or to the
to the
US?
United States. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
United
yeah, because that's
States.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
to the US, to
Okay.
Massachusetts, and so it was a parallel process, and
Okay, wow.
I had to kind of
Intense.
consolidate the two. But it was wonderful, and I also went because I wanted to study, with Joseph Zinker.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to study with Edwin Nevis and Sonia Nevis and
Mm-hmm.
those people. And I was in the last class actually with
Mm-hmm.
We were Joseph Zinker's last class, and then
Uh-huh.
he stopped
Uh-huh.
teaching. I
Mm-hmm.
loved him. I loved him.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was special. Edwin Nevis, I think he was. I mean, it's hard to this. I mean, I think I totally trust that he was an angel, and he was.
Mm-hmm.
And and it was, those groups there were big. Most
Uh-huh.
of the time, we were somewhere between 32 and 38, from all over the world, all over the world. And so it was quite a powerful experience. And so that's where I studied, how to
Mm-hmm.
work with couples, families, and then organizational teams. And it was very powerful. I love that. And then when we I was done with that part of my studies, then I started to work. I started to work mostly, both as a coach and then as a therapist. But then somehow I stayed with this whole leadership thing.
Uh-huh.
I'm very interested in leadership, very interested in authentic leadership. And as the years went by, I realized, wow, this is interesting. I got more and more and more and more and more women in my practice. I started to realize I got somehow more women than men. And I love working with women. I love because I don't know. There is some, first of all, they want to step into power. They want to find their power. They want to have access to those resources inside themselves. And most of the women I've been working with, they all have this sense of mission, to somehow integrate the feminine back into. They don't have these words, obviously, like a leader in an IT company. They don't use these words,
Mm-hmm.
but they have this mission of, bringing in more women, supporting more women,
Mm-hmm.
and what I call and what the Jungians call, just integrating the feminine back into the world, because I think we need that more than anything else. So if you want to also, it's just another item on the list of what are my passions.
Mm-hmm.
The feminine and the true feminine, balance that with the masculine. I don't think if it was all feminine that would be a good thing. I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
But patriarchy is not a good thing either, as we can
Sure.
tell.
Yeah.
As we can all tell, it didn't really work out. And so I totally believe that we can do so much to restore that balance, a healthy balance between feminine and masculine.
And why leadership programs? Why you did engage in there mostly? I'm interested in that too.
I don't know. That's a good question. I'll take that question.
Ah,
I don't know. Some of it was, I'm sure, kind of organic. That,
uh-huh.
I was working in a field, and then by word of mouth, people recommended me to
Mm-hmm.
another
Uh-huh.
executive or another organization. So part of it was word of mouth. I think part of it was probably making a living.
Mm-hmm.
I come from very modest backgrounds, so I always had to support myself financially,
Mm-hmm.
and I think some of it was also the financial reasons, and just creating a life for myself, for my family, and I think I enjoy the work with leaders because there's a huge potential there.
Uh-huh.
There's a huge potential when a leader generates, or when a leader develops a higher level of consciousness, or a higher level of self-awareness, because they are already in a leadership position. They they can do stuff. They can change, they can change the world for the better. They have that power. They have those resources. They can, start supporting other programs which otherwise couldn't be supported, or they can hire people that otherwise they wouldn't hire because of everything that we started out with, that because it's too different or too the other, other than me. But learning more about who they are, integrating more parts of themselves, can help them do things differently at a higher scale, at a higher level.
Yeah, I am genuinely interested in this topic, which is not very known to me. I mean, of course, to some extent, but not that much, and that's why I'm asking you about your like motivation, and besides, how do you see leadership in today's world? How much it is needed? That yeah, and how much it is lacking?
Yeah.
Or
But
yeah.
what I'm seeing is, I'm actually very optimistic because I've been recently I've been working with young leaders, and the reason I can work with young leaders at this time is because I'm going to be 50. Actually, in a couple of weeks, I'll be 50. And so a lot of leaders that I find myself working with are in their 30s, 35, 38, or 40, or but definitely younger than me. And this younger generation, they are so much more mindful. I think mindful is a good word. They're so much more aware, and they want to know. They want to know who they are. It's fabulous. I think it's a fabulous thing that you start with that question. They want to know who they are, and not only who they are, they want to know their shadow. They want to learn about their shadow. They want to integrate, because they understand that without integrating the shadow, which is a lifelong project, because there's always going to be shadow. There's no such thing as a life without, unless we're Buddha. But they wanna work with that, and they understand. They have this understanding that it's not necessarily a pleasant thing to do that, but it's a necessary thing. It's a net for them to feel that they're balanced, or for them to feel that they're centered or steady. So I'm very hopeful, because these young people I work with, I'm like, wow. Very different mindset, and they're very engaging with their colleagues. They're very supportive. They also have big dreams to change the world. So yeah, I'm seeing a good trend, besides seeing everything else that's happening to the planet.
Yeah, sure. And so yeah, so I assume that you've been working with leaders for many years now, so you can see this trend
20,
happening.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wonder what was, I mean, what was before.
But before it was,
What
you
was
ask a leader, so what are you noticing in yourself? And he says, what do you mean? And then I say, well, I mean, is there anything you're noticing inside yourself, like as you're talking or as you're sharing this story? And he says, no, what do you mean? So it's a long trip to get to, like, teaching them self-reflection. I think previous generations are lacking in self-reflection. Always, there are always exceptions, but
Sure,
that's my
sure.
experience. That
Yeah,
it was hard. It was not part of them growing up, or it was not part of them becoming executives or leaders, or it wasn't part of those programs. But those programs were teaching them about corporate processes and how to make better profit, and how, all those things, but not, the big question is, in the 21st century, in the leadership, is who is the leader, and where are those decisions coming from, inside, where, before that it was the how are we doing, how are we generating more profit, how are we making processes better? Before that it was the what, the what are we producing, and now it's the who is the big question.
Okay. Yeah, so I like seeing this change, and I'm interested when we are speaking about exploration. I like seeing the changes, and looking into different trends, and yeah, so it's fascinating for me to actually ask you about And whether this was, I mean, because you've been working in the US and you also had leadership clients here in Hungary.
Mhm.
And I'm of course interested in differences and and
Well, I think the
similarities.
difference is mostly a culture. I mean, and I hate to generalize because that's such a, then we always just end up with projections, really. So a lot of what I'm going to say is projections.
Yeah, but well, but at the same time, this is what we, from the psychological point of view, always saying that we cannot generalize. But from the sociological point of view, well, yes, there are some general trends, I guess.
Well, a culture is part of the field.
Yeah. Yes.
A culture where one
Yes.
grows up
Yeah.
or where
Yes.
one operates is
Yeah.
part of the field. So um, the biggest difference that I see is, as I say, in the culture, not just in leadership, is that
Mm-hmm.
when you start talking about meaningful things, then in my experience in the United States, it's always easier to move horizontally
Mm-hmm.
and like a bigger, like exploring like a bigger area horizontally.
Mm-hmm.
And here in Eastern Europe, or Hungary specifically, it's more like a vertical move. So I can
Uh-huh.
move vertically easier. They're willing
Mm-hmm.
to go deeper, sometimes so deep that actually the tough part is to bring them back up and, just connect them with their body and making sure that they can get into their cars and drive safely. But I think that is the major difference. In
Mm-hmm.
the United States, it's more of and it's also, geographically it's true too, because the United States is an enormous horizontal, it's an enormous territory. It's
Mm-hmm.
huge, and you can drive and drive and drive and drive and drive and not meeting anybody.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh-huh.
whereas in Eastern Europe, it's pretty packed. It's
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
dense. It's
Uh-huh.
very dense, this part of the world. So I'm sure
Uh-huh.
some of it it
Yeah.
comes
Yeah.
from and with the territory, and some of it is
Mm-hmm.
cultural, some of it
Mm-hmm.
is some other things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Speaking about your work and combining Jungian psychology with Gestalt therapy, is it something that you are, have always in mind when you work with leadership clients or with clients, with therapy clients?
Are you asking if it's always been in my mind, or these days when I work, is it all of these are in my mind?
All of these are in your mind.
Kind
Yeah,
of,
yeah, yeah,
kind of.
kind of.
Depends, and sometimes I go completely blank. It's
Mhm,
like,
mhm.
they present a problem or they present a question, I just go blank, and then we work with the blank.
Yeah, yeah,
But
sure. But was wondering if this is that you would call yourself more Jungian.
no, I don't call myself Jungian, and I just have small I mean, I did some training. I'm not a Jungian
Okay,
therapist.
okay.
I mean,
Mhm,
I play with the idea, do I want to invest all that time and energy? And of course, it's expensive too, but it's a
mhm.
lot of time. It's years
Okay.
again and a lot of energy. I play with the idea, I think about it, because I'm interested. I did some Jungian training, but I
Mhm.
haven't done the proper,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
many years,
Mhm.
many
Mhm.
thousands hours.
Mhm.
Not yet, but I read a lot of Jungian books, and
Mhm.
I find it absolutely fascinating, just fascinating. It's such a rich world.
Mhm. Mhm. And
Yeah.
do you use it also in your work with organizations? I
Yes,
wonder.
yes, yes,
Great. Uh-huh. Yeah.
absolutely.
So
I
you've
mean,
shown.
the shadow is such
Mhm.
an important concept in Jungian
Uh-huh.
psychology.
Uh-huh.
Um, I usually talk about blind spot when I translate it for leaders or organizations. I talk about blind spots, the part of ourselves that we cannot see.
Mhm.
We need somebody else to
Mhm.
help us see those parts that are in the dark, in the shadow.
Mhm.
I also do a lot of taboo work, which
Uh-huh.
is also part of the
Mhm.
shadow. All
Mm.
those hidden
Mhm.
um, rules and
Mhm.
restrictions, the oughts and the introjects,
Mhm.
from a Gestalt point of view, which are there, and some are conscious, some are absolutely
Mhm.
unconscious, but everybody
Mhm.
complies with them,
Mhm.
and it becomes very oftentimes just it restricts life or restricts choices, and to
Mhm.
open up these choices and resources. We just need to work with them and look at them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So yeah, it sounds very fascinating. That type of work with organization, with leaders, but with teams. I
Yeah.
could only imagine. Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's and recently I just started to bring in some tales also, some fairy tales and legends, and I'm kind of experimenting, and I love that. I love that experimenting thing. It's like, okay, this is how we could use this. This is another way we could maybe use that. And yeah, and as I'm saying, it shifts the field.
Mm-hmm.
When you share something like that, there's immediately a change and people wake up because it's different.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah, exactly. And okay, and I have like, yeah, we are getting to the end, but I also wonder, has Gestalt therapy, Gestalt training, maybe more specifically, changed you as a person? And
Completely. Completely. You should have seen me 20 years ago. You would have been like, what? I was very different. I was very closed in. I was very unaware.
Mhm,
Not unaware, not just of who I was, which I spoke about, but I was unaware of the impact I created in the world. I was unaware of my ambitions. I was unaware of the forces that were pushing me forward. I've got these big forces inside me that have been pushing me forward somehow.
mhm,
Because looking at my background,
mhm,
it's not. I'm not. I really shouldn't be sitting here talking with you about
mhm,
all these
mhm,
things. It's
mhm.
not logical.
Okay.
It's quite. Sometimes it's quite surprising even for me. But
Mhm,
there's, in therapy, and I've been seeing a therapist for a long time, even today. I mean,
mhm,
I'm in therapy, which I love. But
mhm.
there's this big
Sure.
force pushing me forward, and then of course sometimes sideways.
Mhm,
But I was totally unaware. Probably the first 31 years of my life, and then I started to open my eyes and wake up to my own reality and all the all the
mhm,
things that I create around me, good and bad, because some
mhm,
are obviously weren't very pleasant. Like,
mhm,
oh my God, I didn't realize that this kind of thing hurts people, or I
mhm,
didn't realize that this kind of thing actually pleases people, or
mhm,
the fact that I'm a pleaser, or I, all those things.
mhm,
I
mhm.
changed my life completely. Did you ever get an answer to this question that like no, it hasn't? Has
Well,
anybody?
actually, I don't usually ask this question. I don't
Oh,
know why I asked you. This just came. I mean, there is this kind of question. Of course, some people say, "Oh, this has intensified those qualities that I had," or something like that. Yeah, and I guess my answer to that would be like partly yours and partly that it has intensified some of my the traits of character. But some, yeah, I could really relate to what you said about being in my late 20s and actually didn't really know how the hell I found myself there in this place. And
yeah.
exactly, so, yeah, completely. Mm. Um, uh, yeah, and maybe more thing about Gestalt community, whether you feel part of Gestalt community, you belong, or you are like, how to put it, someone who is working on your own, or appreciate this community-based, I don't know, activities or.
I think I'm kind of a floater. I
Okay.
float
Uh-huh.
between communities, and I have a group of friends. I have friends who are Gestaltists, or some are more trained, and some took, this much training, and others more. But we all speak Gestalt language, or we kind of all practice it, just the here and now to some degree. And I I'm deeply grateful for that. Deeply
Mhm,
grateful for that, and And of course, I know a lot of people, and
Mm,
sometimes, there were times in my life when I was closer with them, and sometimes
mhm,
not so close, and
mhm,
it fluctuates. So that's why I kind
mhm,
of call it like a
uh-huh, uh-huh,
floating.
uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. And I'm aware I haven't asked you how your husband has came on the stage. Where was it? Was it
But
somewhere?
we actually met on Cape Cod. That's where
Uh-huh.
we met, and
Yeah,
that's how
I wanted to ask you then. I was wondering. Yeah, okay.
that's where we
Uh-huh,
met, and
uh-huh,
that's how the
uh-huh.
relationship developed. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but is he a therapist or no, no?
He was a therapist. Yes, he
Uh-huh.
doesn't
Okay.
practice right now, but yeah,
Ah,
yes, yeah.
okay, nice.
But
Thank
about just one last thing about,
you.
Gestalt community, I think the beauty of a Gestalt therapy is that when you, or that's, I don't know about your experience, but my experience is whenever you come together with other Gestaltists, it's always like home. No, I
Yeah,
mean, I have
yeah.
that homecoming
Oh, and
feeling.
this thing almost all people say and
Yeah, it's
underline. Yeah, that's
absolutely. There's that kind of, okay, we can just be who we
yeah.
are in this moment and just kind of be honest and be transparent and talk about what we need, and everybody kind
Mm-hmm,
of understands.
mm-hmm,
uh,
mm-hmm,
yeah, that is, it's like a bubble that we create, and I like, in a good sense, bubble.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I really
mm-hmm,
appreciate that.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, and I guess some of our work is to bring it to the world, no? This Babel, so that other people could actually communicate this way.
Right, just feel
Yes,
comfortable in themselves, feel at
yeah.
home in themselves, and feel at home with others. I mean, wouldn't that
Mm,
be a great world? Yeah, instead of the
Speaking of
other
the,
all
yeah,
the
yeah,
time.
yeah, exactly. So thank
Well,
you.
thank you. It was a lot of
So much.
fun.
Yeah, and I like your name, by the way, Tunde. Yeah, Tunde.
It means fairy
Wow,
in Hungarian.
wow. You
I mean,
see,
Tunde would be in
Tunde.
Hungarian, and the
Okay.
R got cut off by this poet back in the, I think, 18th century, or 17th, I think 18th century. And but Tunde comes from Tunde, which is fairy. It took me a long time to get to like my
Wow.
name, but I love my name now.
Yeah, yeah. I like it. I
I
like it
totally
very
love
much.
it. Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
so thank you. Thank you. Have a good stay with no jet lags and a good hairdresser tomorrow. Enjoy.
I need it. I need it.
I
Thank you
cannot
so
say, but
much.
and yeah, and I will send you an email. And yeah,
Wonderful. Thank you so
thank
much,
you,
and take
thank
good
you.
care, you too. I
Maybe
really
maybe
appreciate
we
it.
will see each other
I hope so.
some way.
I hope
Yeah.
so. Thank
Bye
you so
bye.
much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.